You are listening to the Marketing Equation Podcast with Martin Shervington.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Marketing Equation. Now, this is a very interesting story and a connection. Zoltan Istvan and I connected on, I think, Google Plus last year. It was Google Plus last year. And what happened, firstly, welcome, Zoltan.
Thank you.
What happened is that, I don't know, I came across your profile and I spotted you were running for President of America. And I went, there's got to be a story here. And what I've seen over this time is you market yourself, you market ideas, and then be picked up time and time again by huge magazine sites and by a documentary made on you. And I just went, it's time to tell the story, really, because you're not a marketer. Not like us lot, professional marketers, but you've done an amazing job, and I could tell that you're going to be able to get a lift on what you're doing because you've got a story. Do you want to explain what you've been doing? Do you want a little bit on the context of your
Sure.
your pitch?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I have a strategy that I think most people don't understand, and there's actually a very kind of interesting story unfolding, I think, not about the strategy. So, I'm a 2016 presidential candidate of a very small political party that, I founded essentially to help run my campaign. And so we started from scratch, from nowhere. And what I had, though, in my background is that I'm a journalist. And I also have a number of national columns. I write for Psychology Today, Huffington Post, and Vice's Motherboard. But I also write a few other places. And so if you're a third-party candidate and you don't have $1 million, and I don't have $1 million, my campaign's been run for well under $100,000, and none of that has gone towards marketing. Most of that has just gone towards flights for speeches and stuff like that. But the strategy has really been to sell the media an interesting story. And America has never really seen a candidate that runs on a science platform, so that's been my platform. And, of course, a lot of people found that fascinating, I guess, and found it very interesting. Like, what if we had a president that really wanted to, implement every single decision through science, as opposed to either through foreign policy or their political point of view or whatever. So I have been bombarding the media with pitches and bombarding the media with my own columns and bombarding the media with something that sells ads. And, whether that's good or not, that's the fact. And if you haven't seen the world, it's changing dramatically in terms of media landscape, which is one of the reasons why Donald Trump is doing so well and has completely upended the political scheme. It's not that necessarily he's this great guy or anything like that. And I'm not a fan. I'm just trying to point at that. He just happens to be a media savvy person, unlike Jeb Bush, who everyone thought would be, the next president, or at least running for the Republican nomination. But you need to have a personality and you need media savvy. And without media savvy, you really can't go anywhere, at least when it comes to a presidential campaign.
Yeah. So there's a few things here. The first one is that you're not expecting to win this year. However,
yes.
So and you said that right from the start. But what you're doing is raising awareness and you're building a community of people around you and the potential for you to run again, 4 years' time, another 4 years after. That's the plan, isn't it? So this is the base.
Yes. And two, I would say my number one goal is to lay the foundation for a much more real run in 2024. I'd probably run for the Democrats, the Democratic Party, and I'd probably do it the right way, funding and everything else. Right now, I'm not taking any funding from anyone. So it's really to build a platform and to spread the message of transhumanism, which is that science and technology can let us live a lot longer, but right now, our government doesn't want to put much money into science and technology. They want to put money into wars and stuff like that. So that's the main gist of my platform is less money into military, more money into science, and we're going to be a lot happier for it.
And you got a slogan. Very early on, I noticed that you were able to summarize you vote for me, you can live forever. Right?
Yes. So, that's definitely been the biggest slogan of them all is, I'm the candidate of immortality. If you vote for me, if you want to live.
Yeah.
So.
But you say it kind of glibly, but actually that was a really good marketing boiled down message for what you stand for, and it's slightly sensational, and people go, "Oh, immortal," but actually, what you're saying is divert the money into scientific research for longevity. And you've got really serious scientists that are part of the party that are supporting you around that. So it's like, it's a top level branding thing. Do you know what I mean? And it works because people can pick up on it, put it on a headline. I've seen it so many times.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. But from a marketing point of view, this is what people need to understand, is that you underpinning it all is all of the substance. But you've got to give people things. You've got to help them to tell your story, which is what's been happening.
Well, yes. And so, I mean, this is going to sound terrible to a certain extent, but let's be honest. There's a couple things here, at least you're seeing how media is changing. First, I think your listeners and viewers should know that I started off working at National Geographic literally 20 years ago. And it was at the time one of the most, desirable places to work as a journalist. And the reporting was like top notch. If you got a fact wrong at National Geographic in a story, you could get fired for that. Yeah. I mean, that's how strict it was. 20 years later, the media landscape is nothing like that. You can get facts wrong all day long, or you can skew the facts or whatever you want, no matter where you're writing, basically, except for maybe a few top publications. But basically, it has become, to some extent, a way to increase sensationalism while still keeping the story together and informing the viewer. It is a very different media environment. And if you don't know how to capture that with snazzy headlines, with a bit of sensationalism, with a bit of like, wow, that's totally, clickbait has become something that's so important for media to survive. And whether you like it or not, I'm not saying whether I like it or not. I'm just saying if you don't act that way and you don't understand that, you're probably not going to make it. I mean, just check out how well Bernie Sanders is doing against Hillary Clinton. A year ago, nobody thought Bernie Sanders would be able to do what he's done. But Hillary, who was obviously the number one candidate, just isn't that sensational. No. She's just not that interesting. She needs to get more of a personality, where Bernie represents this great person. This is beyond, I'm not talking politics. I'm just talking sheer personality. You have somebody who has a personality, and everyone's going to that and changing the dynamics of the entire election. So when you create something from a marketing perspective, it's not just sensationalism. It's something that you need to find that really hits the heart of the people and also is snazzy, but also at the same time has some deeper meanings. Like, I always try to represent what I'm doing with real science and technology, but there is a sexy way to do that, and you got to find that sexy way.
Well, let's talk about the bus. Because not only did you find a sexy way, I'm not sure if a coffin's sexy, but you've driven yourself and some people, and you've had journalists come along, and I think you've had some famous comedians that you connected with along the way, and so in a coffin that you constructed around a bus, because it's the immortality bus, and it's part of the story. It's very visual. I've seen it appear many, many times. And again, it's marketing. And it's marketing a very solid story. But this is why, and so you're probably like, why does he want to talk to me about marketing? We normally talk about transhumanism. But I've seen this, and I've seen now so many people that have taken what you intended. You did it right, and it worked. And I remember the stages, because you had to create something that was going to get the attention and create the story in its own right. The bus did exactly the same as that statement. The bus is the story. You can look at it and go, what's that about?
Well, and so for your viewers and listeners to know, transhumanism is not a giant movement. It's just, I think before I got here, it was just a few 100,000 people. Now, a few later, certainly it's a few million. But when you're starting with something small, but you have a great idea, you have to think, how can I make this something much larger than it is? And, we like to compare transhumanism to environmentalism. When environmentalism was starting 30 years ago, nobody was green. Nobody believed in recycling. Nobody believed in anything. You had this one organization, Greenpeace, and they thought, well, how can we get the world to save rainforests? How can we get the world to save the species? So what they started doing was incredibly dangerous activist missions. Yeah. For example, to protest against nuclear energy, they would weld themselves into these nuclear facilities and then have the media come cover them. This was marketing. You're seeing this all day long. If you're not a good marketer, there's no way to win the presidency. Then in this day and age, This is not just about solid skills to run the country. This is about solid skills to entertain and to appeal to the people that you're trying to represent. And I think when I've gone about what I've tried to do, especially with the bus. Now, the bus is, of course, the most sensational thing I've done and probably the most wacky. Everyone about 50% of the people, friends, told me this is the worst idea I have ever had. 4 months later, after delivering our transhumanist Bill of Rights and driving this giant coffin around the country, a lot of people have questioned whether that reaction was right, because the immortality bus has generated perhaps 5 times as much traffic as transhumanism had ever gotten during the years. I mean, I think we're somewhere around 35 million views is what I kind of accounted between television shows and articles, and just really the bus is all over now. And I've had museums approach me and say we'd maybe be interested in having the bus inside the museum because it's become a bit of a piece of history. Yeah, you need activist sensationalism marketing campaigns that do that, and you need single images that are startling, and that they also have to be confrontational. They can't just be there and say, oh, that's really interesting. You need something that's a little bit shocking, but not out of the realm of it can't be stupid. It has to be something that is going to capture your attention and say, why are you driving a giant coffin around the country? And, that was the question. And everyone wanted to know the answer. And of course, everywhere we went, we gave them our answer. And some liked it, some didn't. But everyone wanted to know. And that was the important thing.
Great. I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second and say we've got a slight pop going on. I love we got on your microphone. I don't think you hear it. There's a pop. I don't know whether it can keep your hands stiller. I know.
Sure, I'll try.
We'll try. We'll find out. We'll see. It's like a crackle that kicks in. But right. So returning to the bus. What was the process that you went through to decide that was going to be a good marketing move?
Well, we thought about, I think, the different things that I wanted to market with the bus. We knew we needed a national campaign tour bus. That was a definite thing. The real question was, what did we want the shape of the bus to be? Because I'm not a big enough presidential candidate to have it to just drive a bus around the country. Nobody will pay attention. We're a small movement, and I didn't have money, so I don't have. How do I get people to show up at rallies? Well, we thought at first it should be a giant microscope. After all, we're a science party. But of course, a microscope would be shooting outside, and we'd probably the first bridge break it in half. Yeah. And also, there's all sorts of rules. So when it came down to it, choosing a coffin was quite a functional decision. We had to have something that looked the shape of the bus already, and that could be made into, street legal. There are all these legal ramifications. Every single state had different rules, and we were constantly afraid that somebody was going to make us, dismantle our coffin appearance because it wasn't legal or something. And so we chose that for a wide variety of reasons. But, transhumanists are trying to overcome death with science and technology, and that's the main prerogative. So a coffin is kind of the biggest thing we want to say. We don't want to end up in a coffin. So maybe we ought to drive it around the country and say, this is what you don't want to end up in.
Let's talk about the name transhumanism. It's one that's been around for a long time. How have people responded to that? Because you've inherited that, really. I mean, you wrote the Transhumanist Wager, which is the book that really got you started and pushed you into that realm. How are people receiving that? Because I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe I prefer singularitarian, or do you know what I mean, or whatever. But how have people? Do they understand that it means going beyond human?
Well, now they do. I mean, it's taken a while, and I'm still not sure transhumanism is really the very best word. The problem was that you needed a word that had a historical basis. You needed a word that represented exactly what we meant, which was using science and technology to improve the human being. And no other word really fit. I think the closest other word was cyborgism, but cyborgism has even worse sound. So transhumanism at least has the word humanism in it, and trans, of course, just means beyond. And I think, in our day and age, especially as the LGBT movement kind of has caught on, and now it's okay, culture has said, this is okay. I think the word trans was tied to a lot of loaded and negative concepts to begin with. I'm totally LGBT friendly and very supportive of that movement. So it never had affected me that way. But in the South, for example, people are thinking, well, is transhumanism somehow connected to, being a transvestite or something? So we had to get over that. But I think that has worked. And it's sad that had to happen, that people looked at it that way. But I think trans is a beautiful word. Trans really just means beyond. Yeah. And it really represents in a very clear way, especially the Latin, what we're trying to do, which is beyond human. So transhumanism has won that word war. I have no question about that anymore. And I am still supportive of the word, but, we never really found exactly the right word we wanted. But the word comes loaded with 30 or 40 years of history, and that's also important.
Yeah.
So, I think people go back and forth on the word. I'm supportive of it. I continue to support it. But I understand why, other people chose other words, longevity research, biohacking, singularitarianism, as you talked about. Posthumanism is another one that I think is kind of a leading candidate. But posthuman sounds a little bit too far away from who we are.
Yeah.
Whereas transhuman is like, okay, yeah, we're starting to go beyond who we are.
Cool. Okay, last bit. How much work have you put in on all this? Because I've seen the articles flying. You've been representing. It's in China, and it's been in France. It's been literally all over the world. Russia, you've got loads of features going on. How much work have you done? Would you say? How many articles have you written? How many pieces of content have you written? How many videos have you done? And they've got the documentary, everything. What would you say?
Well, I live the campaign 100%. I wake up and I check my iPhone in the middle of the night every 2 or 3 hours for news, whatever. So it's 7 days a week, 14 hours a day minimum.
Yeah.
And luckily, I don't have any other job. I did early in my life. I had a real estate business that sold, and so I haven't had to really work. I have kids I take care of, but I'm dedicating all my time to this campaign right now. But it's not. You have to see the campaign's not necessarily a campaign. The campaign's really about pushing forward this movement of not dying. That's really what I'm dedicating all my time to. And so it's a 24/7, but I've probably done, almost 100 articles at this point between over 3 years. I tend to do 1 to 2 articles a week. And I find the articles are critical because some of the articles do so well that they then have 7 or 8 commentary articles about them. That gives me releases. And then there are commentary articles about the commentary articles. So one article can easily spawn, if it's done well, 10 to 15 other stories that you could then share through social media. And sharing on social media is critical. I share 3 times a day. I typically share between 5 and 8 articles. I back them up. Sometimes I share 3 at a time. And then the main ones I try to do alone. And, I keep it going through all different forms of social media. But I would say that a combination of all these different things really works. And then every now and then I throw in a lot of stuff in a little bit of stuff in my family life to show that it's not just all work.
Well,
it's pretty much work.
Yeah, no, and it's a lot of effort. You said about the family life side, that was great to watch in the documentary as well, because it was very human, and other people were commenting on that, is that you're a normal guy. I know you're a normal guy, mate, but do you know what I mean? But it was very human. And I think the point is that you're a friendly chap. And what you were saying about Bernie Sanders, it's about having that outgoing personality, but having a message which is consistent behind it, which it has been.
Yeah. No. And I mean, I think my family life has really helped what I'm trying to do, because what I'm talking about is incredibly weird. There's no question about it. It's like merging the human being with a machine, living forever. I mean, we're not just talking about like coming up with some cool invention. We're talking about restructuring all of life on planet Earth. I mean, it's as profound as you can think about. So I think, being sort of a normal person, having been in business, family life, this has all been very helpful for the program that I've been trying to do. And hopefully will be helpful for other campaigns that I will do in the future. But, because the transhumanists are a weird bunch. There's no question about it. As I always mention, we have some transhumanists that want to become fish, and I have a chip in my hand that scares some people. But that said, I guess being normal has been very useful and conducive in facilitating this kind of my campaign and running for the presidency.
I think it's come across as grounded, even though you're talking about some aliens sometimes and consciousness. So I read that. So last bit, if there was a magic equation you could give to people, and I sprung this on you, this is a marketing equation, what would it be?
Oh, this is so tough. What I would say is you need to always come up with an original and fresh message. Whatever you do not try to piggyback off the other people that have done things, because every time I try to do that myself, it still doesn't work. What always works is something radical and completely fresh. And once you have that, the other thing is don't spread yourself to do too many things all at once. Focus on one thing. A lot of people are kind of criticize me for making transhumanism one single thing without realizing that if I had branded it, through biohacking, through cryonics, through postmodern, post-humanism, it never would have gone. You need to take one single idea and hammer it year after year after year. And if you do that, you'll see the growth. What happened is when I first started 3 years ago, the growth was kind of like this. The second year was like this. And now it's like I can't keep up with the growth anymore. It's gone. The media, the interviews, this is the third interview I'll be doing, or the second one of 3 I'll be doing today. It's gone too fast. And it's because there's just one simple message. It's like, vote for me if you want to live forever. Yeah. I think it's very critical that when people look at marketing campaigns, they focus in on this very singular idea. I have many friends that try to do so many different things, and then they never succeed because it's very hard to do many successful things at once.
So I've always said for years, there's 2 phrases, and they're pretty much the same thing. A man who chases 2 rabbits catches neither. That's the one side, right? But the other side, rifle, not a shotgun. And that's really what you're saying, is and I think that's a great message. And keep it fresh and be innovative. Maybe a little weird as well. Let your inner weird go wild.
Yeah, and keep up with the changing media landscape. I can't say this enough. Everyone in the world's like, oh my God, politics is so different in America. They're wrong. Politics is not different. What's different in America is how media has changed. Yeah. Nobody is saying that, but that's the reality. Facebook, social media, all this stuff has grown so much. You don't run your campaigns from a bus anymore by going to a local diner. You run it from Facebook. You run it from social media. And if you don't understand that element, then you're just not going to get as far as you can. So keep up with the changing landscape of media, because in 4 years' time, because of new types of technology, media will again change. Maybe it won't be Facebook then. Maybe it'll be something else, virtual reality, whatever. But if you're not up to speed with those things, you definitely aren't going to have much of a chance to keeping up with people who are and who know how to leverage that entire field.
Fantastic. Everybody, vote for Zoltan Istvan. If you want to live forever, if I was in America, I would, but he'll be president of the world before too long. 2024, everybody, look forward to it. Zoltan, fantastic. Great to see you. And really, I'm watching and excited because you've done so well. It's a great story.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you watching, and I'm excited too. One never knows how this is going to turn out, and it's turned out really successful so far. So let's hope that this continues as we head into November.
Awesome. Take care, man. Great to see you, and I look forward to catching up. We'll have a beer when I'm over.
Okay. Thank you.
See you soon, man. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Marketing Equation Podcast, brought to you by PlusYourBusiness.com and Effective.fm.